For your foldable, you need to have two highlighters or two different colored pencils and a pencil. So we're going to highlight the angles, and then we're also going to fill in the blanks. So for our first types of angles, I can tell that it's a right angle because it has a box in the corner. But this is telling me that when I put these two angles together, they form a right angle. So that means that the angles are complementary. So angle WXY, and let's highlight that. Angle WXY is complementary to angle YXZ. And again, that's saying that when I put them two together, they form a right angle. 65 plus 25 equals 90. So two angles whose measure have a sum of 90. Please make sure you fill that in. In our example, it tells us that one angle is 30 degrees, and I need to find the measure of the missing angle. It tells me that it's 90 when I put it together. So I just need to make a simple equation. X plus 30 equals 90. And so it's just a one-step equation. Subtract 30, and I now know that the missing angle is 60 degrees. Now let's try our next type of angles. This time, the two angles come together to form a straight line. Whenever the angles form a straight line, they're going to have a sum of 180 degrees. So angle HIJ is supplementary to angle JIK. Let's make sure we highlight those two angles. HIJ and angle JIK. Supplementary. Two angles whose measures have a sum of 180 degrees. In our example, it tells us that the two angles are supplementary, and it tells me that one angle is 135 degrees. So I just need to make a equation. X plus 135 equals 180. To isolate the variable, I subtract 135 from each side. And that lets me know that my missing angle is 45 degrees. So those two are simple. Now we're going to talk about one that's typically a little more difficult for students to visualize. So again, use your highlighters. It tells me I have angle ACB and I have angle ACD. This time, when I put the two angles together, they are side by side. So these are adjacent angles. Adjacent angles are two angles that are side by side. They have a common vertex as well as a common ray. Adjacent angles may or may not be supplementary. And so if I look at my example, this time if I were to add angles ACB and angle ACD together, they do equal 180, but that won't always be the case. Now let's take a look at angles LMN and angle OMP. LMN and angle OMP. This time use the same color when you highlight those pairs of angles. If you take a look at them, they both equal 40 degrees. Now let's look at the other two angles, angles LMO and angles NOP. Those two angles are congruent because they both equal 140 degrees. So the relationship between those two pairs of angles are that they are vertical. Vertical angles are two angles formed by two intersecting lines. They are always congruent, which means they have the same angle measure. And so in our example, it tells us that the angles are vertical because the angle across from because the angle across from X is 115 degrees. That's how I knew that angle X was 115 degrees. Because the angle across from Y is 65 degrees, I know the angle Y is 65 degrees as well.